haunting on the late-night train. Late at night, the subway was a different world, a realm of eerie echoes and shadowy corners. As a young woman, I often traveled alone, but I never feared the late-night commute. However, that all changed on one fateful evening, when I encountered a deadly female ghost that haunted the dark tunnels. It was a stormy night, and the rain fell relentlessly, creating a symphony of haunting sounds on the subway platform. The station was deserted, except for a few scattered commuters seeking shelter from the downpour. I glanced at the schedule, noting that the next train would arrive in 15 minutes. I decided to wait, unwilling to brave the rain outside. As I stood alone on the platform, a chill washed over me. I wrapped my coat tightly around myself, trying to shake off the unnerving feeling that something was amiss, but I couldn't put my finger on it, and so I waited, trying to convince myself that it was just my imagination playing tricks on me. When the train finally pulled into the station, its lights flickered ominously, and a shiver ran down my spine. I hesitated for a moment, considering waiting for the next one, but the sound of the rain pelting against the platform urged me to board. The carriage was empty, save for a few scattered passengers huddled together at the far end. I chose a seat near the doors, wanting to be close to the exit in case the eerie feeling returned. As the train pulled away from the station, the lights inside the carriage flickered once more. I glanced around, but there was nothing out of the ordinary. Yet the sense of unease persisted, like a weight pressing down on my chest. The train rattled through the dark tunnels, the sound of the rain on the roof creating an eerie symphony that echoed through the carriage. I tried to distract myself by looking out the window, but the rain-splattered glass seemed to distort the world outside, turning it into a surreal and unsettling scene. I felt as if someone was watching me, and when I turned to look, my heart skipped a beat. A woman stood in the corner of the carriage, her features obscured by a long, tattered cloak. Her eyes glowed with an unnatural light, fixed on me with an intense gaze. My breath caught in my throat, and I blinked, hoping the apparition would vanish like a mirage. But she remained, her presence becoming more pronounced with each passing moment. As the train hurtled through the tunnels, the lights flickered again, and the other passengers seemed to vanish into thin air. Panic gripped me, and I tried to stand, but an invisible force held me in place. "Who are you?" I managed to stammer, my voice trembling with fear. The ghostly woman remained silent, but her spectral figure seemed to elongate and contort, as if trying to reach out to me. Her face remained hidden beneath the hood of her cloak, but her eyes bore into my soul with an intensity that made my blood run cold. Suddenly, the train screeched to a halt, and the lights went out completely. Darkness enveloped the carriage, and the air grew thick with an otherworldly presence. In the pitch-black darkness, I heard a haunting whisper in my ear, a voice that sent chills down my spine. "Stay with me," it pleaded, the words both alluring and terrifying. The doors remained closed, and the train seemed to be suspended in time. I felt trapped in this ghostly realm, unable to escape the clutches of the female specter that haunted me. "Please, let me go," I begged, my voice barely audible above the din of the rain outside. But the ghostly woman remained silent, her presence growing stronger with each passing moment. I felt as if she was feeding off my fear, drawing power from my terror. Suddenly, the lights flickered back on, revealing the other passengers reappearing in their seats as if nothing had happened. The spectral woman, however, had vanished, leaving me trembling in her wake. I stumbled out of the train at the next station, my heart pounding in my chest. The other passengers seemed unfazed, oblivious to the haunting encounter that had just taken place. I decided to take a taxi home, unwilling to risk encountering the ghostly apparition again. But as I stepped out into the rain, I couldn't shake the feeling that she was still watching me from the shadows. Over the next few days, I couldn't escape the memory of the female ghost. Her haunting gaze followed me everywhere, haunting my dreams and filling me with an overwhelming sense of dread. I tried to convince myself that it was just a figment of my imagination, a result of late-night exhaustion and stress. But the fear I felt was all too real, and I couldn't shake the feeling that the ghostly woman was still out there, waiting to claim me.
Don't forget to subscribe and turn on post notifications.
Title: Subterranean Conspiracy. Late at night, the subway system transformed into a haunting labyrinth. with its dimly lit tunnels and deserted platforms. As a young woman, I had always been cautious during my late-night commutes, but one chilling evening, I found myself trapped in a nightmarish web of secrets and terror. The platform was unusually empty when I arrived, save for a handful of commuters scattered around. I glanced at the schedule and saw that the train would arrive in a few minutes. I felt a sense of relief, eager to escape the cold night and reach the warmth of my home. As the train pulled into the station, I stepped inside and found an almost empty carriage. I chose a seat near the door and settled in for the ride. The train departed, its rhythmic motion and familiar sounds usually comforting. But tonight, they only added to my unease. As we traveled through the tunnels, the lights flickered ominously. I glanced around, but there was nothing out of the ordinary, just a few passengers dozing off or engrossed in their phones. But as the train approached the next station, the lights went out completely, plunging the carriage into darkness. Panic swept over me, and I heard the faint whispers of confusion from the other passengers. A voice over the intercom crackled, announcing that there was a temporary power outage. They assured us that the lights would be back on soon, but fear took hold of me as I realized that we were stuck in the dark tunnels. Minutes passed, but the lights remained off. My heart pounded, and I could feel the tension rising among the passengers. Suddenly, a woman's terrified scream pierced the darkness, sending shivers down my spine. In the dim light of the emergency exit signs, I saw something that chilled me to the bone. The lifeless body of a young woman sprawled on the floor, her eyes wide with terror, a pool of blood surrounding her. I gasped, my hands flying to my mouth to stifle another scream. The other passengers looked on in horror, realizing that something sinister was happening. The train seemed to vibrate with an eerie energy, as if the darkness itself had taken on a malevolent presence. Before anyone could react, the lights flickered back on, revealing the dead woman gone. Panic filled the carriage, and some passengers rushed towards the exits, while others began frantically dialing for help on their phones. But just as suddenly as the lights had returned, they flickered off again, and another scream pierced the air. This time it was a man, his body now lifeless on the floor, blood pooling around him. A sense of dread settled over us as we realized that we were trapped with a serial killer in the dark tunnels of the subway. The government had covered up the danger, and we were mere pawns in their sinister game. As the lights flickered back on, the dead man was gone, leaving no trace of his grisly fate. The passengers were in a state of shock and confusion, unable to comprehend the horror unfolding before us. But I refused to be a helpless victim. My survival instincts kicked in, and I knew I had to find a way out of this nightmare. I pushed through the crowd, determined to reach the emergency exit at the end of the carriage. But as I made my way through the darkness, a figure emerged from the shadows. It was a man, tall, with dark eyes that seemed to glimmer with madness. I recognized him from the platform, a fellow commuter who had been standing there when I arrived.
"You can't escape. No one can escape,"
he sneered, his voice sending chills down my spine. I backed away, my heart pounding in my chest. I knew that this man was the serial killer, and he had no intention of letting any of us survive. As the lights flickered back on, he vanished into thin air, leaving me trembling with fear and uncertainty. The other passengers were equally terrified, some crying, others praying for a miracle. But the government had other plans. The intercom crackled again, and a voice spoke with an eerie calmness. "Attention passengers, please remain calm. We are experiencing technical difficulties, and the situation is under control. Please stay inside the train until further notice." Their words were a facade, a desperate attempt to cover up the horrifying reality unfolding inside the subway. They were willing to sacrifice innocent lives to protect their dark secrets. I knew I couldn't wait for help from the authorities. I had to take matters into my own hands if I wanted to survive. With my heart pounding, I made my way to the emergency exit, hoping it would lead to safety. As I reached for the door handle, the lights flickered off again. I hesitated for a moment, fear clutching at my throat, but I knew I couldn't stay in the carriage any longer. With a deep breath, I pulled open the emergency exit and stepped out onto the dark platform. The air was thick with tension, and I knew I had to move quickly if I wanted to escape the killer. I ran through the tunnels, guided only by the faint glow of the emergency exit signs. The darkness seemed to swallow me whole, but I pushed forward, determined to find a way out of this subterranean nightmare. As I reached the next station, the lights flickered back on, revealing the ghostly figure of the serial killer standing on the platform. His eyes locked with mine, and I knew he was still after me. I didn't hesitate. I ran towards the stairs, praying that they would lead to safety. The adrenaline fueled my legs, propelling me forward with each step. I could hear the killer's footsteps behind me, growing closer with every second. With one final burst of energy, I reached the top of the stairs and burst out onto the street. The rain was still falling, but it felt like a relief compared to the horror I had just escaped. As I looked back, I saw the subway entrance, the killer's figure still standing in the darkness. He seemed to be watching me, a sinister grin spreading across his face. But I knew that I had survived the nightmarish subway ride, and I wouldn't let him haunt my thoughts any longer. I turned away, determined to put the horrors behind me. But I also knew that the government's secrets could not remain buried forever. Click the subscribe button and bell icon for more nightmare-inducing stories.